Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May everyone have a seat, please? I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening due to the weather. Before we get started, I would like to ask everyone to turn off their volume on their phone, put it on vibrate, turn it off. I want to be very respectful for the people that's going to be up here giving us a presentation. Okay. If anyone doesn't know who I am, my name is Reginald Jones. I'm a commissioner for Jersey City Housing Authority. We're going to have the first business of order. I would like to ask for Tom Critelli to come up. He's the president of development.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Critelli, and I am here as one of the sub-developers of the Bates Street project, along with my partner, Vinny Ruggiero, as well as the other sub-developers, Michael Mecca and Jack Yao, who are also here tonight. I would like everyone to know that we all support the plan under the leadership of the land developer. That master developer would be Manhattan Building Company. The vision of connecting communities and community reinvestment, we believe, is the right approach, especially in a city as diverse as Jersey City. As sub-developers, we are all excited about being part of this vision. We truly appreciate that vision and leadership from Councilman Jermaine Robinson. In order for the tale of two cities to become a thing of the past, and for Ward F to never be seen as the forgotten ward here in Jersey City, all of us have to row in one direction, and I believe we're on the right path, which you will see shortly. Let's keep the discussion going about community reinvestment, and let's see the entire project through to the finish line. The sub-developers will also be here afterwards for questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Next we have John Cambello. He is from VP of Real Estate. I'm sorry, from Manhattan Real Estate Company. Thank you. Building company, I apologize.
My name is John Palumbo. I'm the VP of Real Estate Development at Manhattan Building Company. You might be familiar with the company. We've built in Jersey City. Recently, the Cast Iron Lofts 1 and 2 collections, as well as the Soho Lofts collection. And the Emerson Loft project's coming up. This is a project, the Bates redevelopment area, that we've been working on for about 3 years. We're very excited about it. And we appreciate everybody coming out here. We're looking forward to getting everyone's feedback and moving this plan forward and bringing this vision to fruition.
Thank you. We will now have remarks from Councilman Jermaine Robinson from Ward F.
Good evening, everyone. Hey, good evening. Today is a celebration. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I just left a celebration. For those who don't know, Juneteenth is the marking of the end of slavery. I'm happy that everyone got a chance to come out today. This is what I've been really trying to preach during this whole process is one community, one Jersey City, and of course, one United States of America. I think it's important for us to all be out here tonight to hear exactly what's going on, because we as a community need to have a say in what's going on. We don't want to just leave it in the hands of the city. We want it to be in the hands of the community at large. And myself as a representative for the city will make sure I hear your concerns and take them back to the table so we can have one united front here in Jersey City, especially Ward F. Again, thank you for coming out and enjoy your evening, and make sure you ask all the questions you need. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Ben, so we're going to go into the community statements. Mr. Ben is not here from Randolph Park Association. but we were informed that Councilman Robinson did have a conversation with them. So we're just going to move on to the next. May I have Mr. Andy Ripperson from 30-year resident of Center Street? Mr. Andy? Oh, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. I've been a resident of Center Street for the past 20 years. I'm the first one to cut a deal with Manhattan builders because this was a very fair deal and it suited the needs of my family. I was treated fairly. I have moved to Bayonne. I bought one of the best looking houses in Bayonne. I'm not lying, it's really true. It's a custom built house. I have no payments, I have no bills, I have no stress. I work at least only 3 days a week now. So what I'm trying to say is must have redevelopment. We must have a betterment. 20 years, I haven't seen much done in Center Street. The house I left is still standing there. The light is still lighting in the stairs. I leave everything. I didn't take nothing that was in that house. I took my clothes and I moved to a new house because I had enough money to buy a new house. Thank you.
Next, I will ask for Ms. Natalia. She is the president of Center Street Block Association.
Good evening. Thank you so much to everyone who came today, including those who don't necessarily live in the area but who care about what happens. As I say, that what happens to one neighborhood can happen to any neighborhood, and so it's important to all of us to understand what's going on here. I'm also very happy to see Mr. Ramprasad here. They have a wonderful family. We really enjoyed knowing them when they were still living on Center Street. They were one of the few people who actually took part in their neighborhood. They were an inspiration to us when we were forming a block association. And we fully understand the plight of an immigrant family who wants better for themselves and their children. We, however, represent a different generation, a younger generation, who is not seeking for easy ways necessarily. And that's part of the reason why we came here. We came here for freedom, we came here for opportunities, and we are still in the process of pursuing all that. And so when it comes to choices between having a home or having a community and having a choice, the choice sometimes outweighs all of the above, okay? So I just want to repeat a couple of things that I said last time. We live in an industrial zone. Many of you drive by it. Many of you have heard about it and read about it. There's no doubt that that a development is needed in that area. We always knew that. And through the past few years, we've seen several presentations at Van Voorst Park Association about potential developments that can happen there. A lot of them were very conscientiously presented, very interesting. Unfortunately, in the past year, a lot of them have been stifled legally and otherwise, unfortunately, for the sake of one bigger picture. And I'm also very glad that the sub-developers have spoken today because a while ago there was a threat to them as well. The Manhattan building companies made a request to the planning board to create an eminent domain process against the larger property owners as well, 15,000 square feet or more. Currently they are protected by the redevelopment plan, but there was a chance that there wouldn't be. And at that time it was important that the smaller homeowners like myself could go and speak up against it, which we did effectively. As we are now, luckily for the sub-developers, they now have a chance to be a part of this project. The small homeowners, however, are at square one to be acquired by JCRA or otherwise, and that is where we need you. We need you to remember that we exist. We need you to help ask the kind of questions that will help us understand where we stand with the city, and whatever vision that gets implemented. We just want to make sure that the rights of smaller homeowners like ourselves, under 15,000 square feet, still have a chance to exist and still have a shot at our own vision and being a part of the city which we pay taxes to regularly, triple lately after the reval. So please keep that in mind. I really appreciate you being here once again. And again, to reiterate just specifically the things that I would like to see this developer to consider is there are a couple of things that they will describe to you today, such as the 4 feet street elevation to prevent flooding. I want to reiterate the fact that in November of 2018, JCMUA, via a grant, has done massive sewer repairs along Center Street, which has eliminated flooding significantly, which we have documented. And so we feel that it's somewhat redundant to make requests that can potentially displace families on that street. So if humane alternatives can be reached, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Artie Williams, but he's actually absent. He's the director of Jersey City Development and Recreation. So I would like to ask Mr. Andy Kemp to come up to speak on his behalf.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm just checking to see everybody's here. My name is Andy Kemp. First of all, of course, be good evening to everybody. We want to just welcome you here. My name is Andy Kemp, and I'm a senior program monitor with the Jersey City Department of Recreation. Lifelong resident of Jersey City, born and raised in Booker T Projects, 92 Fremont Street. That was in the 50s for you youngins. Director Williams couldn't be here today, but when he heard about Councilman Robinson's push for a new STEM and recreation center located in whatever, he became very excited. We all did because we really know the needs of our youth in Jersey City. Crime and violence and better performance in schools have so much to do with young people having a place to exercise both their minds and their bodies. Without that, they're in the streets. So we have to save who we can. We know we can't save them all, but there's a lot of them that we can save. And with a STEM and recreation center, we will be able to do that. So this project really is of urgent importance. For Jersey City to be the largest city in the state and have no city-owned recreation facilities really shows that the city officials in the past have not made that a priority. We are thankful for the vision of our hard work of Councilman Robinson. And we know that this recreation center will save lives in both the near and distant futures. This is truly how we reduce crime and violence in all our neighborhoods, and especially on the south side of our city. At the Department of Recreation, we teach the kids to say, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Yes, I am. Well, that applies to each one of us as adults also. We in the Department of Recreation will do everything we can to support the councilmen and the developers involved with this powerful community reinvestment plan. Councilmen, call us anytime you need help. We're here for you. And it's needed. We need to give back to our kids. We have to have this. Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
Okay, so now we're ready for the presentation. Mr. Jay, he's the owner of Studio Architecture, and Mr. Anthony, he is part of the ALM Consulting Group. He's a specialist for affordable housing regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Well, that was a tough act to follow. I'm going to have to do my best. But is that a little closer there? Is that better? So I've come before this community and different members of the community a couple of times, and I've got a big presentation. I'll try to go through it quickly because some of you have seen it before. There is a lot of new materials towards the end that actually show new renderings, that actually try to answer some of the questions. And of course, I want to leave enough time for questions and answers at the end also. So I'm Jay Valgora, and I'm the owner of Studio Architecture. And I'm an architect, and I'm an urban planner, and I work a lot in communities, and especially about reconnecting communities. It's a big part of my practice. I do a lot of work all over the tri-state area. I'm based in New York City, and I'm doing many projects, and I'm kind of humbled and privileged to do a bunch of projects in Jersey City. And I brought Felita Lee here from my studio, and she works with me, along with a lot of other talented people. So let's hit it, Felita. So first I'm going to just start briefly, and many of you know this, I'm just going to go through it fast because you guys don't need much of a history lesson, but we always start with the community context. We look at all the communities. Should I put that up? Is that better?
Do it like that, the page number. I want everyone to pay attention. So as he's going through the slide, at the bottom of the slide, there's a page number. So far, we're on page 3. If you have any questions or any concerns about any part of the presentation, try to remember, write it down. We provided the cue cards that you can write any questions or any concerns down. Just make sure you have the page number so we can get back to it towards the end of the presentation. Thank you.
So thank you, Reggie. That's a good point. And if somebody can't see it, just ask me at some point and we'll make sure we call it out so you guys can refer to it. So look, we start looking at all the communities when we look at a site. It's a big thing for me. I hang out, I go there, I look at it, my staff, I go eat there. It's very important to kind of get to know them. So we really look at all these communities. Keep going, because we'll go through this quickly. So Van Horst, and there are many folks from Van Horst here, clearly has a very defined character. It's a historic neighborhood. It's got a lot of brownstones. It's got beautiful townhomes. It has wonderful little street gardens. It was kind of an inspiration to us in some ways because there are some things that are very beautiful about it. But every community is a little different. But there are some classic things. Now we looked at the South Side, and the South Side is also a very important historical community. I'm going to go into some of the background. It has a variety of different kinds of housing, it has schools, and we spend time here and also look through this because it feels very separated from some of the other neighborhoods. And it's important to us that we look at how we connect it, but there are parts of the South Side too that have some of this original fabric. As a matter of fact, it used to be the same fabric, it used to be connected when we looked at it historically, where there were smaller 3- or 4-story buildings, there were connections between them. It also has its own beautiful parks, like Lafayette Park. So we look at all the communities. This is important for me to understand and learn from it. Now then we looked at Liberty Harbor North. Now I'm showing you this is a site that today is empty, but the city, separate from me, separate from this discussion tonight, has already made plans for this entire neighborhood. So if we go to the next one, Felita, this area is already approved and undergoing development, separate from what we're talking about. So we take that into account too. We want to know not only what's here today, but what's planned and what's approved for Jersey City by others. And Liberty Harbor North and Grand Jersey is part of that. And you can see that this entire development along the waterfront is already 100% approved, and a series of buildings and towers are actually under construction or completed in that area. This is one project actually that I did work on that was part of my firm, which is Crescent Park. And that envisions a whole new city park that is going to be built there. As a matter of fact, the developer recently undertook the land swaps with the city because the land was all divided and cut up. And they've actually now just succeeded in doing the subdivision, so this future park is coming to this area, which is also include major infrastructure improvements. So we've dealt in the past with issues of parks and public space and infrastructure. Please keep going. Now there are other neighborhoods that are a little further afield. If we look at all of them, there's Paulus Hook, which also has some of these historic characteristics and comes up towards the waterfront and so forth. So we really try to look at each of these communities, and one of the most important things in my practice, in my designs, and I'm glad to talk with you afterwards, answer questions, show you other examples, go to our website. We do a lot of work in kind of reconnecting communities, taking edges, taking gaps, and reconnecting them. And that's what we'd like to do here, and that's what we've been asked to do. So we look at the history. So this is Jersey City in 1841, and this site used to be kind of on the edge of the city. As a matter of fact, 8th Street was where the Mill Creek used to be. So it actually used to be a waterway, and that's part of it. Keep going, Olivia. And then by 1919, the fabric of the city went right through. It used to be connected. The blocks went right through, the fabric of the houses and the buildings actually continued through continuously. Now, by the time we get to 1955, that's a significant park there in the upper portion. The park looks kind of white. So actually the park moved a few times. You'd be amazed, this is post-war, where a lot of the things shifted. And by the time I get to 1980, right? They built the highway, and the highway was one of the things, the thruway, that started to cut the neighborhood apart. And they also put the park there. The park is a good thing in many ways, but now suddenly you have the park, and then you have the highway. And so this started to kind of cut the neighborhood in half, although historically, for over 100 years, it was, or I guess for more than a half a century, it was really connected together. And many times, you know, we look as planners, as architects, like infrastructure moves were often made in the 60s and 70s, where it divided neighborhoods, where they put infrastructure. It often divided neighborhoods of color. It's a very important thing. So a lot of our work is about trying to figure out how to reconnect that. And I can't remove the highway. I can't demolish that. And and there's many reasons why you need it, but we can do other things that start to reconnect it together. And so I look at the history, and I look at all of our designers, look at the character of a place, and we try to understand that to make it better. So, now I get to 2019, and you can see that this is the redevelopment site area. Now, I didn't pick the area. The city actually long ago created the Bates Street redevelopment area, which means years ago, and I'll talk a little bit about the history of that, the city identified this site as a place that needed redevelopment. A lot of times when you build this infrastructure, like a highway, you kind of create an edge in the middle of the city, and oftentimes that becomes, as the woman described earlier, an industrial zone. Oh, thanks, guys. And it oftentimes becomes, so this is the outline of the redevelopment area, and many times it becomes kind of an industrial area because it backs up against a throughway, and an area that used to be full of homes and shops and parks suddenly becomes kind of an industrial area. And then many parts of that area, there are a few people who live there, and we recognize and acknowledge that, but many parts of it become run down or maybe underutilized, and it stayed that way for a long time. And it started to create a division within the neighborhood. Whoops, sorry. So then it's divided, the Bay Street redevelopment area. Again, this is something that the city did years ago, and we're working with it. The right-hand side shows a mixed-use district. So this area here, thank you, Frida. So this area is actually the residential area, and then there's open space, which is actually under the kind of highway area. And so this is part of it. So this defines what we're working with. And there's also a little triangle down here, which has a gas station. Okay, so this is how it's laid out today. Let's go to the next. So now the current site conditions, and this was kind of profound for me when we started working on this. I didn't really get this until we studied it. So you look on the left, and they did what they call a blight study, which means they said, we have a problem, this area really isn't as good as it could be. We have to invest in this area, we have to change something. The city did that in 2005, so that's 14 years ago. And they basically said, we need to rezone this area because we want to redevelop it. So they did that, had nothing to do with us, but they did that back in 2005. Now it's 2019, and the photo on the right, you can go a little slower, go back there for a minute, shows that it hasn't really changed. Now it's funny, as a planner, it's a big deal to rezone something. It's a big deal we're here tonight to show all this stuff to you. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of investment, it takes a lot of working with local elected officials, it takes a lot of working with communities. They did all that in 2005, and you know what happened? Almost nothing. And that's a terrible failure. When you're a planner, when you do all this work, when these other folks did it, who meant well by it, who intended it to succeed, they wanted it to rejuvenate this neighborhood, but it must not have been done correctly. And when you do a rezoning, and I do many of them, when you do master plans, when you try to connect together communities, when nothing happens, it tells you that you did it wrong. And now we got to figure out how we can do it right. Go to the next slide, please. So these show other examples, again, to the left and to the right. It's almost astonishing to me that after they undertook the entire study, the entire zoning in 2005, nothing happened. If anything, maybe perhaps it degraded and got a little worse, and so on. So again, to the left and to the right. So I was astonished by this as I went through this, because I thought perhaps there were more recent conditions or other problems, but in fact, this problem has persisted for a long time. So now let's talk a little bit about site connectivity, because I think that's a really important thing that I've heard in the meetings that we've had with elected officials, with the community. So let's talk a little bit about that. This is a larger diagram that shows some of the larger areas of Jersey City and some of the connections between open spaces, waterfronts, major streets. It's called kind of a figure ground where we sort of color in the buildings, and we create these green areas where you can see the parks and some of the connections. We go to the next. So this is kind of a close-up that shows some of that area, and it shows it built out in the future when Liberty Harbor North, which is underway right now, and many of these buildings are done, but others are coming, are there, and you can start to see the connections. Next. Now this shows the current condition at the underpass of the thruway, and it's completely empty. Now this is challenging. We can't pretend that we can solve everything, but we're going to try to solve conditions at the thruway. It's tricky because it's a different agency, it's the State Department of Transportation. I don't get to tell them what to do, but we can work with them, and we've done it successfully in other areas, so we're going to try. I just can't promise it. And we want to make connections under the thruway. And we want to take those areas that today are blank and gravel and fenced off, and we want to create lighting, we want to create landscape, we want to create some improvements. If state DOT will work with us, and we're going to try very hard to work with them. And we're going to show you examples where it's been done successfully in New Jersey, in New York, in other areas. So for example, here is the 14th Street Viaduct at Hoboken. On the left, as you can see, the Brooklyn Bridge underpass in Brooklyn. On the right, you can see it there. This is Los Angeles, where people have incorporated art and monuments, and I like the idea of doing things like that. You can see it also on the right in Toronto, Canada. So I think that there are many examples. Sorry, we're not going to do questions in the middle, but if you do have a question, if you could just note this slide. I just want to make sure we get through the whole thing, and then we're going to...
Page 32.
Right.
We're going to have a question
Yes.
at the end of the presentation.
And I'm glad to stay and answer any questions that anybody has. So there are other examples in Sunset Park, New York, and this is an area where I've done a lot of master planning, where they've created greenery and lighting to make it safe. That's actually the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, which is really a terrible elevated highway. And they're making new connections there in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Oops, sorry. And then the one in Mexico City, where it's also even possible, I was just there to create greenery and things like that. So we're going to work to try to do that. But I also want to talk about other tangible community benefits that I'm going to come back to, like that recreation center and other things, because those are much more solid. We can actually really plan for those and do those if that's what everybody agrees to. Okay? But we definitely want to try to make a connection under the thruway too. So open space and recreation improvements, let's talk about it a little bit. So currently, committed under the Bay Street Redevelopment Plan is about $2.8 million. Proposed, what we're talking about, and there's more information here, because we wanted to come back to you with real numbers, real facts, real metrics, recording this so that everyone could hear, because this is what's under discussion. It's important to do it in an open and transparent manner. We're talking about adding another proposed $11 million of funding, with just additional funding of about $8.1 million, about $8.2 million almost, of additional funding for open space and recreation funds. Now again, I'm an architect, I don't decide where every bit of that goes. We work with your elected officials, your community leaders, your community groups. But let's talk about some of the places where that could go. So some potential uses for that include improvements under the New Jersey Turnpike, the underpass. So that was what I was just talking about. If DOT will work with us, we'd like to put lighting and some artwork and things like that, because that'll create a much better connection between the south end and between Van Horst. And so that's important. But also, there are other things that are more controllable. So for example, a potential spray park in Booker T, Washington. When you talk to the Booker T community, you could create something for the children there, something to cool them off in the summer. That could be very nice. There are other examples of that in the city. In addition, we're talking about improvements to the Booker T, Washington basketball courts. There are similar conditions over in Hamilton Park that people are enjoying, so these are things we could do. We're looking at improvements to Van Horst Park, and most importantly, and I heard about it just before, this development of a recreational center. I heard the other speakers talking about that, and this seems to have aroused a great deal of interest in the community. And so building a really state-of-the-art recreation center could be fantastic. So these are some examples of how we look at that, where they can contain classrooms and game rooms, they can contain computer rooms, they can have educational facilities, and these can have profound impacts on communities and on youth, as you heard some of the other speakers talk about. And this shows other examples, such as Hamilton Park with a basketball court and their spray pool, Booker T's basketball courts, which could use some enhancement and some improvements. So these are the concrete proposals that are underway and under discussion. And if we do this redevelopment plan, funds can be allocated, including that additional more than $8 million to do this work. Next.
Page.
So the president,
That was page 39.
39.
Page 39.
Thank you. And anybody, if you want to know page number, sorry. Just want to get through this, because I want to make sure I have some time to answer all your questions. So, preservation of the view corridor. Now this is an interesting concept, because how can we create visual connectivity, view corridors between the two communities? So, this today is a photograph that shows an aerial view of the elevated turnpike. You can see it right here, and you can see how the streets pass underneath it. Next. Now this is a view that we've generated. We use these computers and we draw stuff, and in the existing redevelopment plan that predated us, the one from 2005 that wasn't built out, they showed basically an approved base height of about 125 feet. So that's about 12 stories. So basically they're saying you can build a continuous wall of 12-story buildings immediately adjacent to and next to the thruway. And so what our thinking is that that's really kind of a wall between two communities, that it doesn't create any view corridors, and a greater and more varied building experience would allow us to create more distinct view corridors. So instead of that, we're proposing this, where you could have some taller buildings, and they are taller, and we're not hiding behind that, mixed with a series of lower buildings. There are those 4-story buildings with townhouses where I can take these narrower streets, make them wider, I can make gardens, I can open up the view corridors, and I can push some of that height a little bit higher so that you can really see passages through. And frankly, it's inspired by some of those beautiful neighborhoods and older parks and things in the South End and Van Voorst and Paulshoek. These are classic Jersey City housing types. And I'll show you some pictures and examples of that so you can be the judge yourself.
That was page 42 and 43.
Right, and Felita, maybe you go back and just show the contrast together. So 125 feet, sort of a continuous wall. These are straight out of the redevelopment plan. So I used their criteria, their diagrams to create this computer-generated image. Felita created it. And then this is the next one that shows where you have some greater height with the view corridors between. But then we were asked, well, can you show that from the street level? Can you show the difference there? So Felita did a new drawing. So here it is. This is as of right with the very tall ones. And you can see this is how it works out. And again, I have some taller buildings that are set back. But instead of that, that's the old one, we're proposing this, which is lower, set back, widening the streets, putting in gardens. And I'll show you more of a real rendering of that so you can see it. This is just the diagram, but it shows you the contrast between, again, if you go back, existing today, what could happen, and forward, we're proposing lowering this. So part of being smart in planning is making some things lower and more open, and then making some things taller so it's more varied and making the right choices, where we improve the view corridor next. So that's a view of what we're proposing. It's drawn very carefully, it's accurate. Again, Felita helped draw this, but really, I was inspired by those beautiful townhomes, so we set it back. It makes the street wider. We created stoop gardens here. We created a variety of housing types. And the developers committed to doing this, so this is really inspired by those traditional types. And then the towers are set back behind them, as you can see them here. And they're very much still visible, but it really creates a much more active streetscape with an open view corridor to connect these two communities. So, now a lot of people have asked about the units and the sizes and the types, and it's complex. So I want to go on the record and share all that and be transparent and make sure we get all that out in the open and answer your questions. So the as-of-right scheme allows 900 units maximum intensity with the bonus, and I can get into that in detail, but the basic version is that there are provisions within the plan that allows it to max out at about 900 units. It's even more complex than that, because that's the number of units, but the actual bulk, and the bulk means like the building envelope, the volume of the buildings, which is dictated by the plan, actually allows up to the equivalent of over 1,600 units. So as a matter of fact, other developers, when I previously looked at it, it actually would have allowed larger areas even. It would have allowed actually filling that up with storage or other things, so it actually makes it even appear much bigger, okay? But the units based on the maximum density are limited to 900. Now in the new scheme, we're showing 2,360 units. So it is an increase in units. And part of the reason and the rationale for an increase in units is because when the previous scheme was approved with 900 units, 14 years passed during one of the largest times of economic expansion and construction in Jersey City, and none of them were built, and the site stayed empty and decrepit. So that tells you that the previous plan failed because no one built it out. And it wasn't a time of terrible recession, maybe a few years. It was a time of enormous expansion and construction throughout Jersey City. So it tells you that the previous plan with the density did not work because it was not built. So this is an important point, and this is partly how we're showing it. So the total square footage goes from about 1.6 million square feet to about 2.8 million square feet. Next. And we're going for a slender tower with room and space in between them, which actually matches many of the surrounding developments. So height comparison relative to mass transit. We do have mass transit, and frankly this drawing is a little bit small, but we basically show that it is a transit-oriented site, and actually the transit of the light rail line is dramatically opened up. access to this part of Jersey City, and we're about 0.5 miles, a half a mile to the train, and that's considered absolutely, in planning terms, a transit-oriented site. It's a short walk, it's about 8-minute walk, and so that actually puts it well within the range of transit. And so the tower heights, if they go up to 50 stories, 60 stories, this is very commensurate with other developments throughout this area that have similar access to mass transit. This shows the idea of the two types of development, low-rise and high-rise. Here you see the low-rise development in Van Voorst, and you see the low-rise development in the south side of town. And you show the low-rise development actually that we're proposing passing through the site. And the next slide shows the taller towers, where all of these areas and all of these areas also have tall towers. And so we're showing that we're really combining these two types, slender towers with open space, light and air in between them, and lower buildings in between to create connectivity, as well as the community benefits. This is a shadow study, and the good thing about it is, so we do these kind of computer drawings, and we look at like where the sun comes, and this actually starts very early in the morning, so this is early in the morning, and then it works its way all the way into the afternoon. You can see the time frame on the right, where we calculate and show how shadows work. We can play this again, and I'll come back to it. This is slide 51. But the interesting thing, if you look at this, because we want to be careful about shadows on parks. We look into this too. So the good news is it does create a little bit of a shadow onto the park, onto Gateway Park, although you already have the huge elevated highway looming over it. So frankly, that casts, and it's like very early in the morning, like basically it's 6 in the morning in the summer, when the park is really not in use. By the time you get into the middle of the day, or even the latter part of the morning, when all the people are using the park, it's completely free and clear in the sun, and it does not shade any other parks, including Van Voorst, of course, which is way too far away. It has no impact on it whatsoever. So this is important, and we can come back and show you this. But it's careful. It's important to us to make sure that we look at the effects of light and shadow. Next. You get stuck on that for a second. Where we go. Okay. Thank you, Kula. So now, this shows what's currently built out, and go to the next. And this shows the full proposal. And let's talk a little bit about units per acre. So there was some question about that too. So the current development plan that we're showing is an increase in a change in the number of units per acre. And it's important, and people have asked about that. Now the existing plan is about 156 units per acre. That's the one that nobody built anything for 14 years and it failed, but it was 156. The current plan, as we're showing it, would be higher. It would be about 400 units per acre. And it's important to point that out. So as part of that, we looked at all the surrounding developments around us, and I just want to point these out that they are 660, as you can see here, 509, 429, 682, 457, 608, 564, 405. So my point here is that we're proposing about 400, which is commensurate and less than most of the other surrounding dense developments that have access to transit. And it's important that we look at these measures and we do the appropriate studies to show how it works relative to mass transit and how it's appropriate relative to density. Next, infrastructure. Now this is one of the key points. And when we get into the Q&A, we have a great civil engineer here who's worked on this plan. He's going to help answer it, but I'm going to start to present it because infrastructure is a big deal with this site. Now I deal a lot with resiliency. I deal a lot with flooding. I just came back from the city of Miami where I met with the Mayor Suarez there and actually worked for free for 1 week with the Urban Land Institute to help develop an entire resiliency plan for the city of Miami. And I'm actually working, was appointed by the Mayor of New York City to write the waterfront plan for New York City for the next 10 years from 2020 to 2030. I'm on a board of 18 people that were appointed, and I'm the only architect appointed to it. So this is a topic I just want to say that I know a lot about, and that I care about deeply, and that affects many people and many communities. It's a problem. Our cities are flooding, and this neighborhood, many cities are flooding, many areas are flooding, and this neighborhood absolutely is facing this challenge. Jersey City in particular actually faces some very difficult challenges. So this drawing, I just want to explain what it is. You see all that blue? That blue, which I understand covers a great deal of the south end, it covers Van Voorst. I'll tell you if there's one thing that links these two communities, which might have different points of view, Both of them suffered from flooding terribly. The South End and Van Gorst and the downtown and many parts of Jersey City. Boy, if there's one thing you guys should be able to agree on, this is a problem for many people, and many people suffer from it. And unfortunately, it doesn't have easy answers, but we do have some answers. So I'm going to try to get into that. So this is a video that was posted. It was posted by one of the residents that actually shows the street. And it was also raised that some improvements have been made. They haven't actually renovated the stormwater system here. They merely cleaned it out, which actually made it work a little bit better. But this is a diagram that actually shows the streets here. So there was some question, but there is no question that the entire Bay Street site is absolutely in the floodplain, and in the floodplain up to 3 feet. So when the next Sandy comes, and it will come, this site will be flooded with 3 feet of water, not 6 inches, not 8 inches. In a major storm surge such as Sandy, and I experienced that when I lived in Manhattan, took my kids out into it, this site is about 4 feet in the floodplain. It will flood 3 to 4 feet, and many of you have experienced it. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Those are the federal FERMA flood maps, and we've already experienced it. So we have to address this. Now, there's one piece of good news. So the good news, let's keep going, Felita. The good news is that when you have a site like this where there is so little development, and there is some development, there are a few people there, I want to be careful, but the vast majority of it, and with all the major property owners supporting this scheme, we have an opportunity that is rare, that we hardly ever get to do, that I hardly ever get to do, that a city can rarely do. And that opportunity is we can redevelop the entire infrastructure of this site because it has so little infrastructure, because it's so poorly served, and we can elevate the whole site. And when I say elevated, we're elevating about 3 or 4 feet. It gently slopes up. It's like a slope you have all the time. It's fully accessible. You can hardly notice it. You just walk up it. But we can elevate the whole 4 blocks. And we're doing this on many other projects where we can, but it's rare to be able to do it for 4 blocks. And it's only because these 4 blocks are so blighted and so largely empty that you have the opportunity to lift it up. And it's actually the best solution. And this is one of the only moments you can do it. When you lift it up, you also, this may not be something that all of you know, when you lift it up, utilities have to be just underneath the soil. They can't be deeper. You can't put 4 feet of new soil on top. So actually you have to rebuild all the utilities, which is normally so expensive, but there's so few utilities here, and they're so outdated that we can do both, elevate the site and rebuild the entire utilities of the site and solve it forever. And this is a big point. So this is a special assessment district. All the property owners will sign these special assessment agreement. The roads would be raised to prevent flooding. We've already looked at the civil engineering. It gently slopes up. It's not like it's on stilts or something. Like, it's just this very gentle rise. And it actually is perfect because it lifts up the whole site. We separate the combined sewer into 2 systems. If you guys don't know what that means, what it means today is that the sewer system, and this is a problem, is combined with the stormwater system. That's called a CSO, or Combined Sewer Outfall. And the problem with that is, what it means is they kind of, in the old days, they thought it was smart. They'd rush all the rainwater through so it would kind of clean out the sewage pipes. But the problem is that it would overwhelm your water treatment plant, your sewage treatment plant. So they kind of stop the valves, and the water goes back, and the raw sewage comes out into your waterways. And I just want to explain to you, when I showed that street before with the water, with people driving through it, kids walking through it, that means there is raw sewage in the street. And that's not a supposition, that's not a scare, that's a factual reality. And it's unsanitary, and it's unsafe, and it shouldn't be that way. And Jersey City in particular is one of the cities in the United States that suffers the greatest from this problem and is under a consent order from the state of New Jersey that they have to address this. And this is one area where you can start to address it and fix the problem. And this development will do that. So the estimated cost of doing this with a new water distribution system, a new sanitary system, we separate them, we take it all the way back to the main line. So it eliminates this problem, and the raw sewage will no longer come into the streets, and the streets will be elevated. And the cost of this is about $15 million. And this isn't just a number thrown at it. This was done in combination with the JCMUA, that we actually worked with them and developed real plans and real schemes. And these are actual drawings that show redoing all of these sewer systems, separating them out, taking it back to the main line, connecting it through. This is a very significant investment to fix the problem for good. And I'm glad to answer questions on that. If you guys have any, what was the slide number on that one? That's 57. Thank you, Felipe. Okay, So let's get to the end of it because I want to make sure I have time to answer your guys' questions. So Manhattan Building Company is the overall developer, and then there are a series of sub-developers under them, as you've heard, that can develop individual parcels. So I just want to say that this was the area of Soho West in 2011, so this is a major part of Jersey City next. And this is it in 2018, so within 7 years, these 4 major buildings were all built. They're all occupied. It's a real community now. I've been there, I go there to meet with them. So I work with a lot of developers, and not all developers are real, I gotta tell you. But these guys have definitely built a lot of buildings, and by the way, they suffered some of the same problems where these buildings were also in the floodplain, and they lifted them all up and elevated them in the same way. Unfortunately, they didn't have the opportunity of doing it all at once to lift the streets, so they had to elevate the sidewalks, which isn't as good, but it still works, and that was the only choice they had here. And we can actually do an even better job in Bates Street by elevating the streets, which is the better way to do it, and what they wanted to do and proposed. So that's good news, and so it really shows examples of how they've done significant new residential communities and development, including, as you can see there, low-rise as well as some of the taller buildings. Next, a vision for the neighborhood. So this is what it looks like today. This is a view of the Bates Street area. Next, and this is the same street, and what we're proposing would be there. Setbacks, stoop gardens, townhouses, individual areas with the taller, slender towers in between. Next, these are some close-ups that just show how we try to really look at the details and the architecture, the materials to do something that would be terrific, because I believe in doing very high-quality architecture for communities. Next, this is a current view that shows looking towards the downtown and looking beyond to Manhattan. Next. And this shows with the full build-out what would happen with the slender towers, with the connections in between, and with the other areas to the right as part of the existing approved redevelopment areas. These are some details that show it up close a little bit and starts to show this connectivity here, where you can start to see how we want to make these paths in between, and how we want to do the lower buildings, and how the taller buildings are separated and allow more views between them. Next, this is a view of the development. We'd like to do a very high-quality development that has great architecture, great public spaces, great gardens. This is a view of it during the day, where again, you have parking garages built in. The parking is tucked behind those townhouses, and you have beautiful gardens up above. Next. And this is a view from Booker T, showing the openings between them, and instead of a continuous wall, you get openings and views and connections between the buildings. Next. So here is that view corridor as of right that we showed you before, and here is what it could be instead. Next. So value-added incentives for Ward F, I'm near the end. So these are some of the things that are proposed. Number 1, build a $2.5 million charitable contribution, create a contribution to build a first-class recreation center in Ward F. Create a recreation fund to improve the facilities in the immediate area, and coordinate with the government and New Jersey Department of Transportation to utilize space under the thruway. All 3 of these things are on the table. Next, and that's slide 73. Additional affordable housing opportunities for families. Eliminate long-standing blight by replacing existing dilapidated buildings with a first-class development, including affordable housing. A lot of our projects in New York, and this is a new thing, we're doing percentages of affordable housing. This project would have 20% of the entire project would be affordable housing units in accordance with the proposed inclusionary zoning ordinance, and ensure a thorough and fair vetting process to make sure that affordable housing applicants, we find the right people and that are appropriate, for the project. So 20% affordable housing. Next, connectivity. The current plan kind of prevents that connectivity. We feel it doesn't address it all, and it failed to be built out. So we want to create these connections, the view corridors, and so forth, with more slender buildings that allow light and air views in between. The infrastructure improvements we went through, including contributing $15 million to rebuild the failing sewer infrastructure, raise the street level, create this kind of brownstone residential character and streetscape, and also support the city's Vision Zero pedestrian safety initiative. So new sidewalk extensions, new street lighting, and this is a very sustainable and ecological approach too. Parking improvements, I talked a little bit about this. Provide new off-street parking, maintain street parking, and adding a lot of parking within the project, but wrapping it with active retail. So there would be parking garages that are set within the project, and you can see that here, where these are those kind of townhouse developments, the setbacks, and then this is the parking within the center of the block, and it's wrapped with active uses. And that's very important because it's not just parking garages on the street, but you see windows and homes, and the parking garages are tucked behind them. Minority contractor and labor participation, the project is committed to providing job opportunities for local minority contractors. It's committed to providing job opportunities for skilled laborers and apprenticeship workers. It's committed to providing job opportunities for minorities, long-term construction contracts and jobs, property maintenance, landscapers, doormen, cleaning services. The developer is committed and representing publicly and on the record that they will provide opportunity for independent compliance entities so it can interface with the New Jersey Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Because it has to be done right. And that's on the table. Next. So I think we get to the Q&A, and there was a couple of questions that we were asked, and then we'll do an open Q&A with the rest of you. So one was, how does the proposed height and density of the project compare to other projects that are approved or constructed? Right? And next. So these show some of those issues. Oh, sorry, if we go back. Right? So how does it compare? So I think I kind of went through this and took you through some of the densities and showed how our project is commensurate with that of other transit-oriented developments, how it's commensurate with, it's actually less than almost all of Liberty Harbor North, which is actually at densities of 500 and 600, maybe down to about 420. And so we're really looking at something about the range of 400. And again, the exact unit counts might change a little bit, but this is what we've talked about. And also the heights and so forth are also commensurate with those of other surrounding approved redevelopment areas. How does the proposed parking ratio compare to the Bay Street area? So we proposed 0.5 cars per unit. It is a transit-oriented site. Maximum is up to 1 per unit. And when you look at other examples, the Grand Jersey development, which is approved right nearby, it has no minimum, but it does that, and it's up to 0.75, so it's a lower percentage. And if you look at Liberty Harbor North, Enos Jones, Jersey Avenue Park, all of those are the exact same thing we're proposing. Those are other adjacent developments. Others, such as the Jersey Avenue Light Rail, Montgomery Street, they have, again, the same ratios. And One Exchange Place actually doesn't allow parking. So really, we are providing the same or more than all of the other adjacent developments. It is a transit-oriented development. What tax abatements are proposed for this project? This is a key point. The answer is none. That's a big deal. That means tax abatements, of course, are where the money goes away and goes, as an incentive to the developer. And in this case, for example, you look at revenue for the schools. So, for example, currently, revenue from this site on a tax basis is about $550,000. That's remarkably low. That means because this site has so little development and has seen so little development for so many years, that it is unbelievably unproductive and doing almost nothing for the city and the community. That's the problem right there. Now, the Jersey City school allocation from all this property is about $133,000. Now, projected when we do this development, it will be giving the city about $17 million in taxes. There is no tax abatement, which is an astonishing statement. And the school, from this development alone, the Jersey City projected public school allocation will be in excess of $4 million, and they could use that money for the kids. Next, affordable housing. I'm going to introduce Tony, who is your local resident affordable housing expert, and he's going to explain that part. We're almost done, and we're going to take your questions.
Thank you. You're welcome, Jay. That was a wonderful presentation, by the way. Good evening. My name is Tony Martetta, and I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, lifetime resident of the state, hold a master's degree in city and regional planning as well as business administration. And to tonight's point, I served as the executive director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency for 7 years, ending in December of 2017. I've been asked by Manhattan Building Company to come here to speak to the issue of affordable housing. As Executive Director of the Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, I spent a lot of time here in Jersey City and funded quite a few projects, probably amounting to about 1,000 or between 1,000 and 2,000 units here in Jersey City. One you may be aware of, near Lafayette Park, not too far from here, is the old Whitlock Mills project, which was a failed project that sat there vacant for 10 years. Well, if you go by there today, you'll see that construction is underway, and I was told by the developer as recently as last week that hopefully by the end of the summer, the first buildings will be coming online and being leased up. And that will be 330 units of housing, of which 60%, or about 200 of those units, will be affordable housing. On this project, as Jay has indicated, the project will have over 2,000 units. 20% means that you're going to have 400 to 500 units of affordable housing proposed and implemented in conjunction with the development of the project. Now, let's see. John, that's a much better slide than the information you gave me before, and it's a lot clearer. As you can see, the proposal for this site will be to produce, I believe the number in phase one is 115 units of affordable housing. And those units are broken down. The definitions for affordable housing are a little complex and some people misuse them, but essentially 80% of the median income for an area is designated as the upper limit for people and units that qualify for affordable housing. So what does that mean? In Jersey City, you're part of a district that has, for example, and it's broken down by household size as well, 1 to 8 or more members of a household. But for just discussion purposes, we'll use a 4-member household. And in Jersey City, Hudson County specifically, the median income for a family of 4 is about $114,000. I'm sorry, I got it right here, my notes. And the household income for a family of 4 is 47. I'm sorry, it was 98,546. So for a family of 4, beg your pardon? For a family of 4, the low income is 50% of the median, and that would be $47,576 a year. Now that's the gross income for that household of a family of 4. But that then gets translated into what they can afford for rent. And that is 30% of that number. So translated for that same family of 4, 80% of median income, a 2-bedroom unit would be about $1,100 per month, all right? But that's not the only category. That's the moderate income category that goes between 50 and 80% of household income. For a family that is in the low income area, it would be 30%, and that would then lower that monthly rent for a unit to be about $1,100. So you can see the differential. Now, those units are what the rents will be provided, and those rents will be deed restricted, so that today they're designated as affordable, but 5 years from now, they will remain affordable. In fact, the deed restriction has to be put on the document, on the property, for 30 years. So those units will remain affordable for that extended period of time. So that's the basic outline of affordable housing in the state of New Jersey. There are subsidies available to individuals that still can't afford those rents. Those may be aware of Section 8 or state rental assistance programs. So there are a variety of other methodologies that can be employed to assist individuals in these occupied units that are now designated as affordable. So with that, I think I'll show you a couple of examples. While I was at the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, I encouraged and actually created mixed income projects. Historically, the State Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency was funding 100% affordable housing, which would mean that this neighborhood would have 100% units that were affordable. This complex, the complex right next door, would be without any affordable housing. I encourage, and we were able to create mixed income housing. And if you hit the next slide, there are 3 examples of projects. And by the way, Whitlock Mills is another example where, as I indicated, 60% of those units are affordable and 40% are market rate. The Haynes building in Newark, if you've been there, was gut renovated, and they built 160 units of affordable housing, of which 160 units of which 40% were affordable. That integrates the units of both market rate and affordable into the same complex. My feeling was, as I grew up in New Brunswick, I grew up in a blue-collar community. My father was a shoemaker. Next door, Mr. Nemeth was a painter, a house painter, and across the street was an attorney. It was a mixed income community. In fact, it was mixed use. There was a factory right across the street that employed individuals. That kind of neighborhood had a diversity to it that made it much more viable, I think, than the type of communities that were being developed by isolating individuals by income in one area and individuals of a higher income in another. So mixed income is, I believe, the best way to go. And in fact, the state has expanded the program that I started while I was at the state. The second, just quickly, the second building is the Aspire, which is a building that was 240 units in New Brunswick. It's about 18 stories, and in that situation, it was 20% affordable, very similar to what is being proposed here in Jersey City. That building, all the units are integrated, the affordable units are integrated throughout the entire building. They're on every floor, and they're every style. And the finishes of those units are exactly the same as the finishes in the market rate units, which again is similar to what is being proposed here. Now, last building, Main and Milan, is a project down in Egg Harbor City, down in, rather Pleasantville, down in Atlantic County. So that's a basic overview of affordable housing. I'll be happy to answer questions once we get to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to actually open the floor for Q&A. We actually have someone walking out. There's some handout material. These are Q&A questions from last meeting. So these are questions that was asked and also answered on the handout that's going around. Do anybody have any questions that they have written down on the index card so we can come around to collect? If you do, just wave your card in the air and I'll come grab it.
Can you raise your hand if you haven't received the Q&A packet from the last meeting, so we make sure everyone has one?
Thank you so much.
So I have a few cards already that we're going to start with. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashina Johnson. I am the Chief of Staff for Councilman Jermaine Robinson. As I stated in the last community meeting that we did, there are a few ground rules for this Q&A. The first being that you need to write your questions down on the index card. So if you don't have one and you need one, please raise your hand. The second and probably the most important ground rule is everybody's opinion and question is equally important, no matter whether you've lived here for 5 months, 5 days, 50 years, no matter what your income background is, no matter what your education background is. Having said that, I need everybody to agree to respect each other while we're talking. Please do not talk over people, don't heckle people, wait for your turn to speak. Can we all agree to be respectful of one another? Thank you very much. Okay, this question comes from a homeowner on 50 Center Street. And the question is, I did not see my home on the site plan. What is the plan for that area? Can anyone from NBC answer that?
Is there a map up? I'm not sure exactly what 50 Center Tree is.
What's the plan for that area?
Okay, so that property is now located in the initial phase, in phase 1. If you were to look at the site plan, that's one of the properties that's zoned for 3 to 4 story brownstones.
Does it mean that, my property rights will be diminished because right now I can build up to 7?
No, actually, your property rights will be increased, because right now, the redevelopment plan, the way it reads, the block that you're on, 13801, the block needs to be developed as one cohesive block, or else we have no development rights to that block. What we're proposing to do is remove that language, allowing single-family homeowners, which there's not many in the area, there's only 3 owner-occupied houses in the area, the ability to develop their property if they'd like to. So the first step to doing that would be to reach out to the Jersey City Redevelopment Agency and ask for a redevelopment application for the ability to develop the property.
This next question I'm going to read, however, it was answered in the packet that is being handed out. Again, if you don't have a packet, please raise your hand so you can get one. We have one young lady over here that didn't receive a packet. The question was, what about school impact? How many students and the traffic impact for the area around the schools? So that question, I believe, is on page... I think it's 4. Yep, it's at the bottom of the first page. Next question, can you please elaborate on the types of permanent jobs you plan to create for local residents?
What we're looking to do is, number 1, create an apprenticeship program for construction jobs within the area. This is a program where not only will we provide jobs, but we provide training and the ability to, there is a very big need for local contractors and skilled contractors. So what we'll do is create the apprenticeship program and train contractors to have long-term construction jobs. For example, I understand this is a very big vision and a very big project. It's 2,000 units, but you need to understand that this is going to be phased and this is going to be a 10-year project. So what I get from that is that's 10 years worth of work. That's 10 years worth of local job opportunities. Manhattan Building Company is known throughout the city to hire locally. I work for Manhattan Building Company. I live in Jersey City. Here's our lead architect, Ron Russell. He lives in Jersey City. It's a very common thing in our company, and we look forward to creating more jobs for the residents of the city and the state as a whole.
So I have a card with 3 questions regarding transit, the PATH trains, the light rail, and buses. That question is also answered in the packet. The next question is...
I'm sorry. We got it.
After we get through the new questions. There is a mention that the presentation today is phase 1. What is phase 2? Where is phase 2? Will phase 2 be more high rises?
I guess that's just a slight miscommunication. Phase 1, Manhattan Building Company has acquired all the property necessary for phase 1 of the project. So that tall, slender tower, which Jay did a beautiful job of designing. Right here, that's phase 1. These other projects here will be phase 2, 3, and 4, but everything that you see on that slide right now is the entire project, which will be phased over the course of probably the next 8 to 10 years.
So we got this question a lot by phone call and email, and we have it again tonight. Can this presentation be circulated to the public? If yes, how?
The answer is yes, but the issue is timing. So at Manhattan Building Company, we have a strict policy that we don't distribute the deck and the presentation until we know the direction of the project. So as soon as we have clear direction from planning, the planning department, which is the department that essentially will be deciding what goes on in this area, we'd be more than happy to share the presentation with whoever wants to review it.
Next question, will the affordable housing be located within the Bates Street redevelopment site? The short answer to that is yes, but I'll let John elaborate.
The answer is yes for phase 1. As Tony Marchetta just stated, we're proposing 20% on-site affordable housing, which would equate to 115 on-site affordable housing units.
Are there any more question cards? So we're going to circle back to some of the ones that are in the packet and just ask John to say a few additional words about that. The first was, what is the school impact? How many students will these developments bring? And what is the traffic impact for the area around the school?
Okay, so in terms of school impact, this is a question that we received at the last meeting, and this question kept me up at night for many, many hours. And I put a lot of research into this because I really wanted to give you guys a thorough answer. So what I did is I looked, as I was saying, Manhattan Building Company is the developer in the Soho West neighborhood. As of right now, we develop cast iron lofts 1 and 2, as well as the Soho West building. So, after looking at the numbers, the average age of the resident is 29. The average age of the child is 4. And the average amount of units that are families with children is only 6.5% of the units located within the area. So, under cast iron loft, there's Via Quinte School, preschool. Via Quinte is a school for children of the age 3 months all the way up to 2nd grade. And I guess the point of this slide is to show you that because of the tenant in the building, of the rental building, it seems that there isn't as many children in the area. It doesn't have as great of an impact as you would think. So Via Quinte, which is the only school that services the Soho West neighborhood, has a capacity of 104 children. When I went to speak to the executive director the other day, she told me that the enrollment there is only 34 people, so the impact is actually very small. We expect the same percentage of children, percentage of units, we expect the same percentage of units with families with children in the Bay Street redevelopment area. So ultimately, whatever planning and the city council approves, you can estimate an average of 6.5% of those units will include children. So actually, if you look at the Bay Street redevelopment area, it's actually much better service and for schools than the Soho West neighborhood. You have 5 schools within walking distance, and then you also have 2 new schools coming online, one at 25 Columbus That's pre-K through first grade. That's 35,000 square feet, which I think will be great to address some of Van Voorst's concerns of overcrowding in the school. And also the beloved charter school, which has location right here, is opening up their second charter school, and they're expanding, and as you can see, it's very close to the Bay Street redevelopment area and could service the Bay Street redevelopment area. If need be, like was done in cast iron lofts, we could do something similar to Via Puente on one of the sites located within the Bay Street redevelopment area. We can slide for the turnpike. So the question was, how will this development impact the traffic? And the biggest concern was the off-ramp to the turnpike. If you actually were to go over to Center Street, you'd realize that here's the turnpike off-ramp, here's Center Street. Center Street and the turnpike off-ramp is actually separated by a divider all the way down to Montgomery Street. So I think the impact will be minimal. With that said, we just retained a traffic consultant who will be performing a traffic study, and that will be an ongoing process as we move forward with this plan, with the planning division.
This next question, John, if you want to elaborate on it, you can, but I think I have the general answer. Are you incorporating all of the Bay Street redevelopment area? How are you going to obtain all of this land? We came in a little bit late, but I believe the other property owners that are in the Bay Street redevelopment plan are present. There's a total of 5 of them, and NBC is the master or lead developer. So they are not going to acquire the other property owners' lands. Those developers are going to build on their own land. Did I pretty much cover it? Okay. This next question, how and where are you going to fix the sewage problem that affects Booker T? Is it covered under your plans for this site with our water problems?
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Reeves. I'm the licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. Worked on the infrastructure plan that you see there. Booker T is adjacent to this redevelopment plan. I would say it's indirectly going to be benefiting, not directly. We're going to be rebuilding the infrastructure on the Bates Avenue redevelopment area and discharging it to the waterway and separating the system into a sanitary and a separate storm system. So by doing that, you are freeing up area or space in the existing combined system that Booker T drains. So by taking out the flow and the volume in the Bates Avenue redevelopment plan and properly discharging that into 2 new systems, all of that existing volume in the neighborhood of the Bates Avenue development plan will free up space in the existing systems. So by doing that, Booker T's system will benefit, as well as the adjacent neighborhoods adjacent to the Bates Avenue development plan. That's the best way I can answer it.
I asked that question because on page 57, it looks like it had a list of streets that you're gonna fix, page 57, and I didn't read Booker T, and that's why I asked that.
She said there's a list of streets that would be fixed.
I can't read that, so I asked for Booker T.
I believe Booker T is off that map. It's on the top of the sheet. So we are not impacting the Booker T roadway system.
Well, as long as you fix it, okay, thank you. It's just one question.
So this question was in regards to, I guess, the historical data in the presentation. I believe I can answer it. Why are we observing the land from 1841 to the present day? Slavery was still very present in Jersey City. This is very insensitive to the minorities in the community. So the reason why we go back to what the land originally was is to show the evolution of the land, what has happened with the land over the course of that, from that time up until now, and why it's important, as Jay pointed out in one of the slides, when the Turnpike extension was built, oftentimes, as he said, throughout this country, things like that were done to separate neighborhoods of color. And so MBC is making a conscious effort to try to reconnect communities that were once divided either physically or emotionally. People felt that they just didn't belong on the other side of that line. So it's very important to understand the present, to go back to the past and to see what things were. That was not meant to offend anybody, and we apologize if we were offended, but we just wanted to show the historical evolution of that area. Who deems affordable housing affordable? How is affordable housing measured in relation to the current residents in the area? The affordable housing guidelines are both federal and state. Those are set forth by their guidelines, and in order to make changes to those guidelines, that would be something that our state and federal legislators would have to do. NBC does not have control over the affordable housing guidelines.
Will phase 1 accept Section 8 vouchers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, these are some of the transit questions that were answered, but we can ask John to elaborate a little bit on them. Are you working with New Jersey Transit to increase the frequency of the trains and buses? The PATH trains are already at maximum capacity. How are 2,300 plus new residents getting to work?
Yeah, the past trains, those are regulated by state and federal government, as well as the New Jersey and New York Port Authority. So Manhattan Building Company doesn't have any influence over what happens at the PATH station. With that said, we'd be more than willing to work with PATH and the city to make the area the best we possibly can and make it a transient-oriented community.
Where are the residents who don't manage to get a parking spot in the complex going to park?
So in addition to the on-site parking, this project also supports Councilman Solomon's upcoming parking ordinance. So the idea is for the street parking is to create its own parking zone for the Bay Street redevelopment area, which will, in addition to the parking units in the building, will create another 125 parking spaces.
So this last is a three-part question, but I'm going to read it all together. It says, what is the lot area of Cast Iron Lofts 2? How many units are in that development? Given those answers, what is the units per acre density? If the density at Cast Iron Lofts 2 is less than 400 units per acre, then clearly it is financially feasible to develop a less denser project.
So Cast Iron Lofts 1 and 2 combined are about 400 units, and that lot is 2 acres. Getting to the point of financial feasibility, I would say it's apples and oranges. The reason being, this project incorporates a lot more community reinvestment, which includes 20% on-site affordable housing, $15 million in infrastructure, a $2.5 million contribution to a recreation fund towards a recreation center in Ward F, which is extremely important to the councilman, as well as an additional $11 million which will go towards an open space and recreation fund, which will go into improvements for Booker T and Van Forest and wherever else the community and the council deem necessary.
Okay. The first approval was 900 units. The answer in the question package says that if not approved, developers would have no choice but to build a wall. Why not build 800 units without a wall?
First of all, I don't think you can build 800 units without building that wall of buildings. And keeping the number at 800 units, that essentially is saying that the community reinvestment we're proposing is no longer on the table. The only way this unprecedented community give back proposal works is because the additional density. Density is what makes it work. So doing the tall, skinny towers preserves the view corridor, but also provides the community reinvestment necessary.
I would just add, as a planner and an architect, the question was, why don't we keep the existing redevelopment plan? And the answer is, you've had it for almost 50 years and it failed. And then you're saying, why don't you keep that and reduce it? Then, in my opinion, it would continue to fail even more. You've obviously had a 14-year experiment that has not worked during one of the greatest times of expansion in Jersey City's history.
Okay, so there were additional questions that were asked, but we do have this packet that is 7 pages long, and those questions, those questions were answered in this packet. The developers and the master developer and the other property owners are going to be here for a little while longer, as will Councilman Robinson. So if you would like to ask them some individual questions, that you can do that. But we do have to respect the school who graciously gave us this auditorium for this meeting and be out of here promptly at 8 o'clock so they can clean up the auditorium and get it ready for tomorrow. We'll now have closing remarks by our Councilman Jermaine Robinson. Sorry, we have one last question. The developer wants to pay for the increased apartments at the 2005 rate of $5,500 per unit. As a result, Ward F and Jersey City are losing out against the current cost of $50,000 per unit. I don't know if that's more a question or a statement. Do you have
Would
a
the
response?
developer be willing to up it to the current rate of 50 grand a unit for the bonus?
Where are you getting the $50,000 number from?
The 50,000 a unit is based on fiscal analysis that's been done on several different redevelopment plans for bonus in the last 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
So would the developer be interested in upping it to a current and appropriate rate of 50 grand per unit for the bonus?
That's a great question. Thank you very much. So what we are proposing is 20% affordable housing in accordance with the inclusionary zoning ordinance passed by recommended by the planning board. As part of that ordinance, there is a $50,000 buyout for affordable housing units. We are not proposing to do that. We would like to see the affordable housing in the neighborhood. Affordable housing is a very big issue in this city, And it's something that I don't think a $50,000 contribution does justice. So, is it possible? Yes. Personally, on my development, it's not going to happen. But on the other developments moving forward, that's ultimately going to be a negotiation between several developers, the Division of City Planning, and ultimately what the Planning Board and City Council decides to approve.
So I think we have one more question. If this is your question, we're just trying to make it out. Percent-wise, how much would your contribution cover towards the
yet to be built center? How much of that money that's promised, how far does it get you to make it to build a center?
You mean the 2.5 million?
How much do you need to build a center and how much would the developer give?
So the developer is, for the first phase, is 2.5 million. The rest of the phases is going to cover the rest of it. I think the $5,500 per unit is the cost. Tom, I think the question you was asking.
It wasn't my question, and it wasn't a buyout.
Okay.
No, $500 for an open space trust fund donation, and I'm asking if they would be willing to go up to 50.
So the $50,000, I sit on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund now. I've been on there for the last 3 years. We've been doing buyouts for $18,000 for each unit. And, you know, that was one of my questions that I asked the mayor and administration for a long time. How is it that we're letting developers buy out of Affordable Housing Trust Fund units downtown for $18,000 per unit? I mean, we voted on it for the council. I think it was a bad idea. It was wrong. The administration is taking steps to change that now. So the $50,000 I think you're referring to is to buy out of the affordable housing
No,
units.
it's the language in the RDP that's directly dedicated to the open trust fund. And I'll quote the RDP. Open Space Trust Fund. Right now, it's a $5,500 contribution that goes towards that. Most of those monies are going towards the potential future development of open space underneath the turnpike, which we can't necessarily guarantee will happen, which Jay basically said he's trying to make it happen, but we can't guarantee that. So what I'm asking is, if the redevelopment plan is reopened, because it reopens all the language, to get the language to actually work correctly for the immediate community, that's the people who live right next door to it, inclusive of Booker T, Southside, the people at Center Street. Would the developer be willing to actually change that monetary value somewhere around 50,000, because that number is out there and something.
I think that's already being proposed. Okay. So you're looking at it in the funnel and just saying we're using the same $5,500 number. What you're not saying is that we're also doing 20% outside affordable housing. What you're not, hold on, let me speak, you've spoken up. What you're not saying is that we're proposing another $15 million of infrastructure, which is not baked into the current plan. So it is a significant community reinvestment, but I do appreciate your question.
So I'm going to thank everyone for coming out. I know the developer and myself will be here for a few minutes after. It's 7:55. We do have the school until 8 o'clock. We just want to say thank you to number 4 school for, graciously opening the doors. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for coming out tonight, for asking your questions. This is not done by far. There is still opportunities and chances to talk. I receive, emails every day in reference to this. This is our 7th community meeting. I just wanted to make sure that I got out in front of it so that you guys don't hear this at the last minute. The last 3 months of my life has been kind of surrounded around Bates, and I really want to get back to working for the rest of the community, to do my job everywhere else in the community. I don't have a problem with talking to everyone about Bates Street, but there is a lot more things that we can be doing and working on in the Jersey City and in Ward F. So please get home safe. I will be here for the next 10 minutes until we walk out the door. I'll probably be outside in the front hallway, so this way we don't stand in here, and next time that we get ready to use PS4 school, MS4 school, or PS3, they will let us in to use it, because if we stay longer than that, I think that, they think we're outweighing our welcome. So thank you for coming out. Everyone, please get home safe. I hope this was very informational to you guys, and that you guys really enjoy what they have, and if whatever questions you have, please, my email and phone number is still open. Thank you. We have these questions, and yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you, Leah. That's the one I always have to come back for the next day. Appreciate it.
Which one? Okay, so this way.
Colton was one of them. Down 3rd Street. Worked with them. Colton was right parallel. 3rd Street. And one of those towers is up where the building is under construction. That building is the tallest building in the state of the other side. And when you would approach Jersey City, you can see it from everywhere. Today, you can't see it because there's so many tall buildings down there. Right. So I watch it.
space on the other side. Original exit, you could turn on the light. That's when I used to go to an air special the early 2000s. I know the area, but I know that piece next to it is better part of Florida. The whole entire neighborhood. Well, I'm an urban planner by trade. Concept plan. Main Street is developed as the land. The current, I have to read all that. I know he doesn't want to get out of it. So the building is I was really impressed with their putting that pocket light. And they're going to do this big box. So there's just that to me, there are a lot of people like the hard, I don't know how to answer it. It's included in the plan, so it's really up to we. Who's we besides you? It's part of the plan. Community groups? What's the name of it? We're not proposing anything. When I was at Elford, my employee was head of the bar now, something really used to maintain the Colgate Bar. His name was Bob, and I think it was his last name. It goes back to 2000. And Bob used to maintain the Colgate Club. We had redeveloped that area, built one, and we had the cotton club. So we were responsible for maintaining it, restored, and then found her up over there. And every now and then I would have a glitch. Bob would go over there and take care of it. But he was very active. And it was about this big. He had this reddish blonde hair. It was 18 years ago. Yeah, so, yeah, well, he was probably involved because he was very involved. That whole area was way back. Faster to redevelop the state. One of the emergency centers was the city wants to see the neighborhood. That's the way I you're not forced to. You're not forced to do any development in travel if you want to develop. We have our you have her contact? I work with Ron on this. I'm the engineer. Yeah, good stuff. Stay tuned. I believe it. I was there for almost 2 years. Welcome to the world. I remember you there. protected, you know. Yeah, I was trying to do the best I could. Actually, I had a good time. Then I went back to Dresden.
I've been involved with and I got recruited.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
50-year-old organization.
You asked a lot of them.
I'm on their board now.
I remember seeing your name there. Yes. Oh,
You're a nurse?
I remember that.
You're fine.
You have a twin, 7.5? Mine are 32. I have a twin boys. Now you're gonna have a blast. 7.5. That was lots of fun. I have 2 boys. I don't know. I had a good one. They have an older sister. You know,